Amongst the pigeons chapter notes. Okay, y'all wanted sin, this chapter has some sin. See the end of the chapter for more notes. I would like to propose a toast. Oh God. Adrian sighed, burying his face in his hands as Nino tapped the side of his glass with a fork lightly. I've known Adrian for most of his natural life now, and a small part of me always knew he had a backbone, Nino said as Adrian slid lower and lower in his seat. But a man can only live on hope for so long, faith alone cannot sustain him through the wintry nights of the soul. Make him stop, Adrian whispered to Marinette as his chin disappeared beneath the edge of the table until only his hair and beet red forehead were visible. But as the ancient Japanese proverb goes, even Buddha will get mad if you slap him in the face 3 times, Nino continued as Marinette pulled Adrian up by the collar of his shirt. And for the metaphorical third slap, I would like to thank Marcel Dubois, in the same way the townsfolk of London thanked Ebenezer Scrooge for dying in Scrooge. Because if he weren't such an insufferable tool, Adrian might never have found the courage to leave the corporate equivalent of a breakup text on his desk when he left. Normally that's something I frown on, but that's still more than Marcy deserved, Aaliyah shrugged, taking a sip of her drink. I'd also like to thank everyone for making it out here on this holiest of holy days, Nino continued, despite Adrian's scarlet expression. I would like to thank Aaliyah for her sage online counsel that kept the faith alive during the Tokyo years. You're welcome, Aaliyah said, clinking her glass against Nino's. And for looking fine as all hell in that dress, Nino added. Very welcome, Aaliyah said, winking over the rim of her glass. I would like to credit Marinette for being the 11th hour ringer team Adrian desperately needed, Nino said, clinking his glass against hers as Adrian shook his head and scrolled through his phone. I don't know what you did, but clearly your presence alone is enough to make Adrian finally buck up and love himself enough to quit. I don't know how much credit I deserve, Marinette chuckled. As much as anyone else does, Adrian said, clinking his glass against hers with a small smile. Take the damn credit, girl, Aaliyah said, glancing between the pair with barely restrained glee. And finally I would like to thank our star player, Mr. Agrest himself, for at long last laying the ever-loving smacketh down on his disrespectful, frog-faced, fashion backwards, Nino trailed off, snapping his fingers. I'm blanking, help me out here. Bastard. Marinette suggested. Pudgy. Aaliyah said, wrinkling her nose. No, fat jokes are beneath us, obnoxious. Arrogant, Marinette and Adrian chimed in at the same time, exchanging a fist bump under the table. Loud mouth. Adrian admitted. Good hustle, team, Nino said, clearing his throat. I would like to thank our number 1 player, Adrian Agrest, for opening a royal can of verbal whoop-ass on his disrespectful, frog-faced, fashion-backwards, bastard, obnoxious, arrogant, loud-mouthed dick of a boss at long freaking last. Woo. Marinette cheered as the table erupted into cheers. Amen and hallelujah, Nino said, crossing himself before downing the rest of his drink in one gulp. Cheers, Aaliyah said, toasting an extremely bashful-looking Adrian. Or, since we're at a tapas bar, salud. It was hardly a verbal can of whoop-ass, Adrian chuckled. In fact, I think I just ran out of the building before anyone could stop me. Baby steps, Nino said, bumping Adrian's shoulder lightly. You still broke up with a guy 1 puppy coat away from Cruella de Vil via a note on your desk, that's pretty ballsy. The important thing is you're liberated, Marinette said, taking a bite out of an empanada. Move over Bastille Day, Aaliyah chuckled, taking a small sip of her drink. Adrian Liberation Day is our new national day of independence. Far as we're concerned at least, Marinette said, shooting Adrian a playful wink that didn't go unnoticed by the other members of the table. Aaliyah chewed on the straw of her water, meeting the slight raise of Nino's eyebrows with a small wink of her own while Marinette's back was turned. So you haven't said what your plans were for your first day of freedom, Aaliyah prompted. I don't really know, Adrian shrugged. To be honest, I hadn't really thought it out that much. You forget the kid has been institutionalized for much of his adult life, Nino said, shaking his head. Routine, schedule, work, all planned out for him. God knows he probably hasn't planned a day for himself in 10 years. Shame, Aaliyah sighed. They know I'm sitting right here, right? Adrian murmured to Marinette. Knowing Adrian, he's probably going to do what he usually does, hop back into his kinky leather sex scene, Nino snickered as Adrian suddenly wished there was an eject button on his seat. I thought he already did that, Aaliyah said, foot-tapping Marinette's under the table. You keep this up, people are actually going to think I'm a slut, Adrian muttered, shooting Nino a dark glare as Marinette chuckled a little too loudly, squirming in her seat as talk suddenly turned towards Adrian's conquests. Deny it all you want, there's a reason you have the reputation you do, Tomcat, Nino shrugged, glancing at Marinette. Did I tell you our producer in Tokyo named her Tomcat after him? Really? Marinette glanced at Adrian, who looked like he would rather swallow broken glass than admit it. That's true, Adrian sighed, pouring some more wine out of his decanter into his glass. Clearly I didn't start drinking early enough. Hey, sin all you want, boy, Nino said, spearing a chunk of chorizo with the end of his fork. I'm just saying it's been a while since you got out and played the field, thinking of getting back in touch with Marquis du Château's home city. That's for me to know and you to hopefully never find out, Adrian said, glancing at Marinette for a moment and trying to play it off like he was craning his neck at a group of tourists that had just wandered in. Marinette shifted in her seat, swirling her wine around in her glass as she tried not to contemplate Adrian's future sex life any more than she needed to. She had no right to be jealous of a hypothetical person Adrian may or may not sleep with in the future. She understood this rationally, but the problem with jealousy was that it was so very rarely rational, and try as she might, though to be honest she had long given up on trying, she had a harder and harder time seeing Adrian in a completely platonic sense. The lull in conversation lasted only long enough for Aaliyah and Nino to exchange glances. Hey, walk to the bathroom with me, Aaliyah said, standing up from the table and nodding towards the back of the taperia. Hey, with a nod at Adrian and Nino, Marinette wordlessly rose from the table. Followed Aaliyah, Adrian's eye following her for a few moments until he realized Nino was looking at him. So, Nino said with a conspiratorial smirk as the girls left earshot. How are things with Adrian going? Aaliyah asked, leaning against the wall outside the bathroom. Things are good, Marinette said, tilting her head back and forth as the glint in Alia's eye tugged a smile out of her. What? You're smiling, Aaliyah sing-songed, bumping her hip into Marinette's. What can I say? I'm a great lover of liberty, Marinette said, sparing a glance back at the table where Nino and Adrian seemed to be deep in discussion about something. Is that what you're calling him now? Aaliyah snickered. You gonna ask Liberty out then? I don't know, Marinette said, biting her lip as the line moved a little bit. What do you mean you don't know? Aaliyah said. You two have been flirting and I-fucking since we got here. We haven't been I-fucking, Marinette said. At the very least you've gotten to second base since round 2, Aaliyah said, prodding Marinette's shoulder. Come on, what happened at lunch today? Nothing really happened, Marinette insisted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I mean, earlier, yes. Aaliyah said, leaning in just a little bit. I reached out to squeeze his hand after he told me what happened and he, yes. I mean there was this moment when we just, oh my god, spit it out. Aaliyah spluttered, drawing a scowl from the girls in line ahead of them. Marinette scratched the back of her neck. We just held hands for a second, okay, is that some kind of kink code word for something? Nino asked, brows scrunching. Is that where the guy has the girl and he? It's where two people hold hands for a second. Adrian said, blowing bubbles in his drink as his cheeks pinked. And that's it. Whoa, slow down there, stud, Nino snickered. Next thing you know you'll be sharing milkshakes at the malt shop. Actually that's where we had lunch, Adrian chuckled. The Quebecois one near the office. How 1950s, Nino snorted. You gonna give her your Letterman jacket after the sock hop and ask her to go steady then? I don't know, Adrian shrugged, popping another olive in his mouth and chewing thoughtfully. I mean, we were talking online the other week and she basically sighed. If he wanted to ravish me all he needed to do is ask, seriously. Aaliyah said, folding her arms. Yep, Marinette said. You seriously said that? Seriously, Marinette said. You seriously told him to have his way with you? Aaliyah said, raising an eyebrow. In no uncertain terms. I mean, Marinette scratched her cheek idly. I told him I was kidding right afterwards. Yeah, that sounds more like it, Aaliyah nodded. And he kinda backed off after that, Marinette sighed, leaning against the wall. I mean, I feel like I've given enough signals, right? I've been dropping hints like crazy since that arcade trip and nothing. The legendary flirt apparently isn't picking up on my cues, or he's just wrapped up in the fact that you told him no all those months ago and is trying to rein it in, Aaliyah pointed out. Why don't you just tell her that you want her? Nino said. I mean she's basically giving you the go-ahead by the sound of it. I need better than basically, Adrian muttered, picking at the flaky spinach pie in front of him. There's permission and then there's permission, you know. No, Nino sighed. What the hell are you talking about, dude? It's like an empanada, Adrian said, holding up one of the fried meat pastries for emphasis. Just because it looks like a hand pie doesn't mean it's got fruit inside, right? Right, Nino said. So just because it seems like Marinette is flirting with me doesn't mean I know she wants anything from me, Adrian pointed out, taking a bite of the empanada with a small, approving grunt. Okay, but what if she does want something but is like just embarrassed to ask? Okay, Aaliyah sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. So you have no problem talking to the boy about your weird, freaky sex lives? Thanks for the support, by the way, Marinette snipped. But you're embarrassed to let him know you might want something from him. Aaliyah said. Why? I don't know, Marinette sighed, throwing up her hands. What if I ask and then it's awkward and then I just screw up our relationship? Well hell, you're going to run that risk either way, Nino shrugged. You could be screwing it up by not talking to her about it too. Thanks, that makes me want to run out and ask her out right now, Adrian said, tossing an olive in Nino's glass. All I'm saying is it couldn't hurt to let her know that you might be available if she decides to change her mind, Nino said, holding his hands up. Never a bad idea to let someone know where you stand. It could make things weird though, Adrian muttered. I think if your friendship can survive detailed, candid discussions of extremely kinky sex, your friendship can pretty much survive anything, Nino said, fishing the olive out of his glass and chewing it thoughtfully. Talking about it is one thing, Adrian said. It's all just theory until we, put it into practice. Better than leaving a perfectly good experiment untested, Nino said, nodding towards the bathroom. Want to know what happened when I told Aaliyah I still liked her? What? That night, her place. Twice, Nino said, holding up 2 fingers for emphasis. That's more than I wanted to know, Adrian said. Oh blow me, you made me go to your first munch with you, Nino said, suppressing a small shudder. And if I had to listen to an 80-year-old woman discuss the proper application of shibari, you can listen to a non-explicit reference to the fact that for once my sex life is better than yours. Good for you. It is good for me, Nino said. Know why? Because I took a freaking chance and it totally paid off. It's different with Marinette, Adrian said. Why? Because Aaliyah doesn't want to hook my nipples up to a car battery. Nino said, catching the chunk of chorizo Adrian flung at his head and popping it in his mouth. Because you dated already, Adrian said. I mean with you guys it was just picking up where you left off. Marinette and I have never been anything more than friends. Well, whose fault is that? Nino said, holding a hand up to forestall another argument. I'm not saying I know it's all going to be peaches and cream, but at some point you just need to suck it up and go for it, Aaliyah said, drying her hands on her jeans as she waited for Marinette to finish washing hers. I mean, I hate to say it, but no, you know what, I don't hate to say it at all, you were the one who closed that door for Adrian, so you have to open it again. Great, any suggestions? Marinette asked as they walked out of the bathroom. I can't exactly walk up to him and say, hey, I've been having wet dreams about you since February, you want to teach me how some of this stuff works in person. A passing group of guys stopped and turned to Marinette until a venomous scowl from Aaliyah sent them on their way again. Look, I don't know how you want to handle it, Aaliyah said, guiding Marinette away from the group of guys. All I know is that I think you need to be the one to handle it. Do I have to? Marinette whined. No, Aaliyah shrugged. You could just not do anything, fail to capitalize on this sexual tension between the two of you, and watch Adrian slip away from you again. That's always an option. Marinette sighed, but Aaliyah had a point. She couldn't tell Adrian she wasn't interested in jumping into a relationship and then expect him to take initiative, no matter how many hints she dropped that she was interested in jumping him at the earliest available opportunity. Why? Marinette suppressed a small laugh as they wound their way back towards the table where Nino and Adrian were chatting. She wondered what her 14-year-old self would have thought of potentially asking Adrian a guest. And we're back, Nino said, nudging Adrian and stopping him mid-sentence before Marinette could hear what they were saying. Enjoy. More or less, Aaliyah shrugged. You. More or less, Nino shrugged. As enjoyable as it is talking about Adrian's love life anyway. Still right here, Adrian said, waving his hand at Nino, who spared a small glance at Marinette. Promise me you'll watch out for this guy if he plans on going on any more freaky dates, Nino said, nodding at Adrian. I'm not planning on anything, Adrian said, flushing pink. Yeah, but it's only a matter of time before some pretty little thing snaps him up, Aaliyah said, glancing at Marinette, who felt suddenly double-teamed and not in the fun way. Only a matter of time, yep, Nino nodded. Oh please, I'm not that much of a prize, Adrian snorted. I think you'll find a lot of people would disagree with you there, Aaliyah said, winking at Marinette who squirmed uncomfortably as she looked at Adrian out of the side of her eyes. As pushy as Aaliyah was, she was right, Adrian was a hell of a prize. Powerful, attractive, trust fund babies didn't stay on the dating market for long, and a small part of her rankled at the idea that someone would sink their claws into him who only saw him as a powerful, attractive, trust fund baby. Still, what could she really offer him other than the hassle of babying someone who was literally years less experienced than he was? Why would he know? Marinette resisted the urge to shake her head. No. She had spent the better part of her adolescence too trapped in her own self-doubt to do anything where Adrian was concerned. She was a master of coming up with excuses why Adrian couldn't possibly be attracted to someone like her, excuses that had never borne any fruit in the past. At that point, rejection and humiliation seemed to be preferable solutions to wallowing in unrequited angst while Adrian dated his way through the Paris kink scene. At the very least, a clean rejection would be a fresh start, a chance to move on from Adrian once and for all. She had to do something, before someone else made her choice for her. Well, as lovely as this was, I think we should call it a night, Aaliyah said, standing up from the table. 75% of us need to get to work in the morning, so we probably should pack up before we get too sloshed. I'm not even halfway sloshed, Marinette said, eyeballing Adrian's drink. I don't think Adrian is either. How could you get sloshed on grape juice? Nino snickered, holding Alia's coat out to step into as Adrian stuck his tongue out. Better than drinking that paint thinner you call whiskey, Adrian sniffed, pulling his jacket around his shoulders. At least I don't have to mix my drinks with soda to make them bearable. Here, Marinette said, tipping the last of her Merlot down her throat and smothering a small burp in the sleeve of her jacket. Besides, I'm not looking to get sloshed on a Monday night. Oh please, I'm not going to get hammered after 2 drinks, Aaliyah sighed, rolling her eyes as they fought their way through the bustling restaurant. I'm not a lightweight like you are. In my defense, all I drank the watery horse piss Americans call beer all through school, Marinette snorted. I was never trained properly. Maybe Adrian can train you then, Aaliyah snickered, ignoring the identical gurgles of embarrassment as Adrian and Marinette stole a glance at one another out of the corner of their eyes. Did I say something? And nothing, Adrian coughed as Marinette fell into step behind him. This good night then. Guess so, Marinette said, rocking back and forth on the heels of her feet. Aaliyah is just going to walk me home, so actually, Aaliyah said, looking over Nino's shoulder. Aaliyah is going to be a little too preoccupied to take you home. She is? Nino asked, glancing at her. Oh she is, Aaliyah replied, shooting him a small wink before turning back to Adrian. Can you make sure she gets home okay? You don't need to walk me home, Marinette said with a dismissive wave, suddenly dreading what she might say if she had the chance to be alone with Adrian for too much longer. It's just a couple of blocks away. I don't mind, Adrian said with a small shrug. I was just going to grab a rideshare anyway, might as well do it from your house, unless you'd rather walk alone. I'm always up for some company, Marinette said, swallowing heavily and flashing a shy smile. As long as it isn't too much trouble. I got nowhere else I'd rather be right now, Adrian said, scratching the back of his neck. I'll call you when we get there, Adrian blinked, turning to face Aaliyah and Nino only to find that they were nowhere to be seen, vanished into the small crowd while Marinette and Adrian looked around for them blankly. Where'd they go? Adrian sighed as Marinette's phone buzzed in her pocket. She took it out, rolled her eyes at the message on the screen, and stowed it back in her coach bag. Aaliyah, it's only a matter of time. I'm thinking of getting a cat, Adrian said idly, walking slowly as Marinette balanced with one hand on his shoulder as on the curb next to him. Most people going through a midlife crisis usually get a sports car, Marinette snickered, enjoying being eye to eye with Adrian for once. It made the conversation they were going to have less intimidating if Adrian wasn't looming a foot above her, tall, blonde, and gorgeous like he usually was. Don't really like cars, Adrian said with a small grimace before cocking his head to one side. Might get a motorcycle though. I'll visit you in the hospital, Marinette said, hopping off the curb as they came up on the waterfront. Across the river, the lights in Agreste's office building were still on, people coming and going despite the fact that most of them should have been asleep or with their families by now. She caught Adrian glancing across the river for a moment, gait slowing as he looked almost wistful. Any regrets about leaving? Adrian laughed. No way, just going to be a little weird not going back there in the morning is all. Worked there for my entire adult life and tomorrow well, I guess I kinda have to start over, don't I? Is that a bad thing? Marinette asked, glancing up at him. It's uncertain, but I guess uncertainty is better than a certain misery, isn't it? Adrian said. Isn't that the truth? Marinette laughed bitterly. Not everyone gets the opportunity to walk away from an awful job after all, Adrian said. Which means you need to make the most of it, Marinette said, bumping her hip into his with a small smile. For everyone who can't. That's one way of looking at it, Adrian chuckled, bumping her back after a moment. Careful, I'm in heels, Marinette giggled. If I go down, I'm taking you with them. You've got a lower center of gravity, I believe you, Adrian said. Is that a short joke? Marinette asked, narrowing her eyes. No, it's a short observatio. Ow. Adrian laughed as Marinette kicked the back of his calf with the tip of her heel. Like you said, low center of gravity, Marinette said. Plus I could probably squat you, believe it or not. I believe it, Adrian said. Meaning? Marinette asked. Meaning I've seen you in shorts and it's pretty clear you've never skipped a leg day in your life, Adrian said with a small smirk that quickened Marinette's pulse by a few beats per second. I wasn't aware you were looking, Marinette said softly. Well, it's kinda hard to miss, Adrian trailed off with a small shrug, tilting his head at her. Marinette took a deep breath, glancing out over the river as she idly wondered if she was about to make a big mistake. So, have you given any thought as to whether or not you're going to date again? Marinette asked after a moment, glancing at Adrian out of the corner of her eye to gauge his reaction. Just a lot of talk during dinner and I just wondered if, maybe, Adrian admitted after a moment. I mean I have been living like a monk in a cloister since Dad passed. Don't really know anyone in the Paris scene though, other than you, of course. I'm part of the scene now. Marinette snorted. For lack of a better term, Adrian chuckled, biting his lip as he glanced back at Marinette. And you didn't throw me a party. Marinette said with a small pout. I'm devastated. Any way I can make it up to you? Adrian asked. Get me a cupcake and we'll call it even, Marinette said as Adrian's chuckle preluded another period of comfortable silence. What about you? Adrian asked after a moment. Have you given any more thought as to whether or not you want to get more involved? I have, Marinette said, willing her voice to remain even. I kind of reaching the limits of what I can learn about it online, you know. I know, Adrian said. Still, you shouldn't feel like you have to start playing or I don't, Marinette said, picking at a loose thread in her cardigan's pocket. I mean, I don't feel like I have to or anything. I just want to. Just get out there and start meeting people, you know. Adrian said, quelling feelings of anxiety and jealousy as he walked on. For some reason, the thought of Marinette being with someone else, even regaling him with details of her playdates, made Adrian's stomach churn. So, you want to try being with someone then? I think I do, Marinette said, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. I think I want to. Well, that's good, Adrian said, shooting her a toothy grin. I mean, if that's what you want it is, Marinette said. Good, Adrian nodded, scratching the back of his neck. I'm afraid I don't really know anyone locally who would be open to, so I can't exactly play matchmaker for you. Adrian slowed his pace as he realized Marinette wasn't keeping up with him. He turned to see her standing under a tree, fingers clutching her coach bag anxiously and biting her lip as she refused to meet his eyes for some reason. That's okay, Marinette stammered, looking out over the river as though the answer to her questions would be on the far shore. I kind of had someone in mind already, Adrian said, trying not to look as deflated as he suddenly felt. Of course Marinette would be courting offers from other suitors and God knew she didn't have to include him in the vetting process even though he had offered. Have you, known this person long? Yeah, Marinette chuckled anxiously. Quite a while, not an asshole, trust with my wallet. All that good stuff. Great, Adrian smiled. Good, that's good. The, only thing is, Marinette said after a moment, taking a step closer before faltering. I haven't, asked him yet. So it was a him. I'm a little nervous to be honest, Marinette said, suddenly feeling like the 14-year-old who had to work up the courage to put a valentine in her crush's desk. Why? Adrian asked almost genuinely bewildered. Kinda don't know how he'll respond, if he'll take it well or hey, Marinette trailed off as Adrian rested a hand on her shoulder and summoned a reassuring smile. I think he's going to take it well. Why you think? Marinette said, resisting the urge to reach up and squeeze Adrian's hand. Of course, Adrian said, forcing himself to maintain his smile. Anyone would be lucky to be with you. Anxiety seemed to melt off her like wax off a candle, replaced with warm reassurance that made her stand up a little bit straighter as Adrian turned to walk down the road. You don't want to know about him? Marinette called, following him a few steps behind. Huh, Adrian asked, really dreading the answer. Oh, sure. So you've, known him long. Quite a while, Marinette said. Since February, Adrian mused. Have you, met him in person? Adrian asked. Oh yeah, Marinette said, fighting to keep a nervous smile off her face. We had lunch together just this week. She never mentioned anything about that, Adrian thought. I see, Adrian said, lagging back so Marinette could catch up. Have you discussed logistics? We haven't discussed it, but he's flexible like that, Marinette said. A switch then, Adrian thought. Well, at least she'll be able to experiment, that's good, Adrian said, trailing off as Marinette struggled to keep up with his quickening pace. He really makes me feel safe, Marinette chipped in. That's good, Adrian repeated. That's what's most important, right? Yep. He's respectful, he's experienced, he's one of my best friends. Cool, Adrian. Adrian stopped, turning around to see Marinette blinking at him with an exasperated look of bewilderment. Do you really need me to say it? Marinette said softly. Say what? Adrian said, scuffing his toe against the ground. Look, I'm happy for you, Marinette. Do you seriously not get what I'm trying to say here? Marinette laughed, shaking her head. I get that you have a new potential play partner, Adrian shrugged. And he seems like a great guy from what you say about him. Is there something I'm missing? Marinette blinked up at him, breathing through her nose as she took a step forward. He is a great guy, Marinette said, biting her lip as Adrian scanned her face in confusion. I can't really see myself being with anyone else right now. Adrian opened his mouth and caught a glint in Marinette's eye that suddenly made it very hard to say anything at all. He squinted down at her almost hopefully, wondering if he had misread her for a brief moment, but her expression seemed to be confirming what he couldn't quite bring himself to believe. Oh, I see, Adrian said, clearing his throat, suddenly feeling as though he had 10 times the wine he actually had. So, who is this guy? Do I have to spell it out for you? Marinette said breathlessly as Adrian took a small step forward. Yes, he said, voice rasping just enough to make Marinette's toes curl. Spell it out for me. You don't know, Marinette said. I want to hear you say it, Adrian said, tension winding in his stomach like a piano wire ready to snap. She shifted under his gaze but did not falter, hands folded in front of her as she licked her lips anxiously. She had forced herself to the edge of a cliff and burned any roots she might have used to escape. Now all she had to do was jump. I want to try playing with someone, Marinette said, voice quavering just a little as she looked into his eyes. And I want that someone to be you. Chapter end notes. And that sin is envy, https://www.youtube.com/watch. B = 7 COXKSPGINY. Goodness, what's going to happen now? Will Adrian accept Marinette's confession? How will their relationship change? Will they ever do that they do so well? Why am I asking you this? Why am I even bothering with cliffhangers when the tags give away the fact that there is going to be mutual domination, submission in the future? Answer: to test my ability. On a completely serious note, I would just like to thank everyone again for the time and effort they put into commenting on this story. I have been writing fanfiction for going on 10 years now, and this is the best reaction I've had from a community. I really do believe that fanworks are part of a larger dialogue, and being able to see and read what you guys think of the story, whether it's praise, critique, or in the case of this chapter flaming death threats, really lets me know that what I'm doing is being read and received by others in the community. Even if I don't respond to your comments, I promise I read and treasure all of them. From authors whose work I enjoy to readers who give me someone to write for, your support is the fuel that makes this FIC so much fun to write, and I hope I can continue living up to your expectations for this FIC. The good news is that I can't jerk y'all around anymore. We're locked into our salacious attack run, lock S in foils in attack position and arm the proton torpedoes. It was only somewhat naughty before now, but after this we're getting very, very naughty. Next time we get Adrian's answer, a frank discussion of limits, and Adrian and Marinette finally hook up as a couple. There's really no other way I can go with this. I mean, it's not like Adrian and Marinette have the same intimacy issues in this universe that keep them apart in canon, right? I'm sure Marinette's fears of inadequacy and Adrian's pathological people-pleasing personality couldn't possibly concoct a confusing cocktail of sentimental skullduggery, right? Nah, I'm sure they'll be good.